that the way this space has moved has been really weird. And I've been going through the blockchain and just really trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Okay, I think it's recording. Yeah. Awesome. Let me get my right introduction. Okay, guys, in today's special and very, very important video, I'd like to welcome Proof of Research. You've probably seen him on Twitter, dissecting the crypto space, keeping it real. And today we're going to be frying this space, discussing the latest updates, and really going in deep into the blockchain sector and just understanding what is going on. Proof of Research, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm a big fan, and thank you for joining us. Please give us a quick intro before we get started, mate.
My man, I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be on here. You're too kind, man. I'm just I post a little bit, I put some stuff out, find some interesting things, and share them with everybody who I consider to be a friend, and hopefully my friends like it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
It's kind of underwhelming. I'm sorry. But
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's all. That's all good, man. Okay, so let's first question: USD Tether, bitfinex. If it does implode and ultimately collapse, do you think it would create a power vacuum for something to replace it, like another shitcoin, like another stable coin? How would it actually affect Bitcoin and altcoins in terms of their dominance in the space?
I think that shit's gonna get very ugly, and I think it's gonna get very ugly because like nobody wants to embrace the reality of what this is, which is nuts to me. See, when this shit first blowing up in 2018, I thought we were gonna have enough momentum behind it to where people just sort of knew what it was and they were gonna adjust accordingly, but it never happened. It's like people doubled down, and I blame, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I really blame Blockstream heavily for it because they have the most influential people that are in this community, like folks like Jesse Powell, Adam Back, who are telling people it's all good, it's straight, it's fun. Oh man, it's just a banking problem, and minimizing it to not allow people to comprehend how deep this shit is. So I honestly think it's gonna fuck everything up in a really bad way, like in a Mt. Gox type of way that might take a while for this space to get over. Bitfinex, of course, they're gone. I have a really crazy theory, honestly, and
yeah,
I honestly, with that theory, I think it may be more than just a couple exchanges. It might be like perhaps 80 or 90% of the exchanges that we know.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think, kind of follow up to that, because that's interesting, because like I've got my own kind of theories on this as well. And do you think exchanges could even handle Tether imploding on itself if it happens? Can like exchanges even cope with it? And could exchanges protect users if that even happens?
So I think the issue is more so than Tether. What I kind of look at this situation as, so we saw the New York OAG, they came out with some stuff at the end of April. There was a little bit of, chaos, some panic going on with Bitfinex. We saw they had a premium, and then we saw that federal indictment that came down on Richard Fowler and Ravi Yosef. Those were the people who were like running the company that was over top of Crypto Capital Co. And that was where Bitfinex was banking. And since then, I've noticed that the way this space has moved has been really weird. And I've been going through the blockchain and just really trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And I genuinely think that these exchanges are attached in terms of their funds, their cold wallets, and their general solvency. And when I say that they're attached, like the list of exchanges I think is attached, this is going to sound crazy, but I'll read off this list. But I think it's Bitstamp, Kraken, BTCE, they're defunct now, Bitfinex, Anx, HIP BTC, Loyalbit, Taurus Exchange, Bitso, CoinTrader, of course, those are extinct, Gatecoin, Quadriga, Independent Reserve, perhaps Coinbase, BTC Trade, BTC Markets, OKCoin, BTC China, CEX.io, BitMarket, Clevercoin, CoinMate, Cripsy, Mercado, Bitcoin, Huobi, let's see, Poloniex, of course. I don't know if I named Kraken already.
Yeah, you said Kraken. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so all of those and Binance as well. I think all of those are at a serious risk of default because they're not operating, I think, in the way that we think they're operating. I think we all have the assumption that Binance's cold wallet all belongs to like Changpeng Zhao, CZ. Now he can move it freely back and forth, and that Bitfinex's cold wallet is the same as well. I don't think that's the case. I think there is an entity, not on some Illuminati shit, but I think that these funds are tied together and that these exchanges are loaning funds to one another and that the operators that we're seeing, the Brian Armstrong, the Jesse Powells, Phil Potters, and Jean Carlos, I don't think those dudes are able to autonomously move funds back and forth, truthfully. So I think when Tether implodes, it won't be Tether that kills them. I think it'll be the fallout from Bitfinex going under and that hole that it will create in terms of all those funds that'll be lost. Because either they'll have the funds seized or they're just going to say, fuck it, try to run away to an island and we never see them again. And I think that will cause a general insolvency because the network that they're a part of can't sustain itself without those funds. So either the other actors that are involved in this equation will probably just run out, or maybe they'll also be locked up, have their shit shut down, or whatever happens. And I think Binance is the perfect case. My bad. I don't mean to ramble, but the craziest.
No, this is good. I'm loving it. Yeah, this is great.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So the craziest thing that I saw at Binance, and I didn't get a chance to get this to people, but I saw Changpeng Zhao, right? This morning he replied to somebody because they said something like they showed him data from token analysts, right? And it showed there's a little bit of an outflow of Bitcoins. And they said, what's going on, Binance? It looks like, at least some people are getting withdrawals. So then that's when CZ, he replied to him and he was like, I don't know what that thing is showing, but we're not sending anything out to anybody. If you've seen something, show me a transaction ID or something like that, right? So I'm like, hell no, I know for a fact they've been sending things out. So, I go through the cluster, I start looking through some transactions, and I see one wallet, like an outgoing transaction from the exchange. So I show it to him, he kind of he gives me a weak ass reply. He doesn't respond anymore. I already know what that's about. But I go back and I really examine it because I'm like, yo, what the fuck's going on? So I see there's this wallet, right? It sends 140 Bitcoins straight to the hot wallet at Binance. So this was like a deposit address. But if we remember, like deposits and withdrawals have been shut down. So this has to be Binance, unless they have some special exemption for only certain people. So I see it has 140 Bitcoins in total. 100 Bitcoins goes to the Binance hot wallet, and then 40 Bitcoins to some randomly created wallet, right? Now that randomly created wallet, it then sends 5 Bitcoins off somewhere that's not part of Binance's exchange, and then it sends the remaining 35 to their hot wallet. And I think like this is mad weird because normally, like if you're a customer and you send some funds, like let's say you send 2 Bitcoins to Binance, they just sweep that shit right into their hot wallet, the whole thing. But in this situation, they separated a few of them on the side, which one, I thought that was weird. And then two, the fact that nobody can deposit to the exchange, yet there's this wallet that I'm seeing has just been kind of consistently sending like 100 Bitcoins at a time was mad weird. But every time I track it back, it always comes from another exchange. And that's strongly led me to believe that one, there can't be safe view funds. Like I don't care what people said, and I even put out something earlier today. Like somebody show me the wallet and I'll give him a couple hundred. But there's no way he has that. And they have a cold wallet, so I don't think they're holding on to funds on other exchanges either. So that kind of leads me to believe that there's some sort of network or system in place where other exchanges are working with each other, like Coinbase, Bithumb, Bitfinex, Binance, a couple of the Korean ones too that I didn't mention, and some Japanese ones as well, are sort of sharing funds and liquidity with one another. And I think they're doing it behind a system that's called like Bitnik Reloaded. And I'm going to try to go in on that as much as possible because there's just no other explanation that makes sense. I think they're tied, and I think that's what's going to make this shit even crazier because when one collapses, it's going to take out a lot of really big parties in this.
Yeah. That's deep, man. It would make sense. Everyone's kind of interconnected as well. But the question remains: if they kind of if the house of cards falls apart, who would then take over? Would it be like institutional platforms, like, I don't know, for example, Fidelity or something, like what they're doing? Would they kind of then step in and be kind of like the heroes and authority, like, you know, as the saying is, chaos like brings order, kind of thing?
That's a good question. I think it all depends on how the governments go about it because there's going to be mad money that's going to be lost. And part of me thinks the governments, other entities are going to see like the carnage that comes from it, the hundreds of millions of dollars that'll probably be lost, maybe defrauded, ran off with, or seized. And I really think they're gonna look at it and be like, nah, we had enough of this shit. Like, we need to like crack the whip. Like, listen, we let you get off on the libertarian tip for a little while. We kind of let you do your thing. It wasn't too big, but now it's gotten, and we got to step in for real because we know if we don't, then that same vacuum gets created where these bad actors come up again. I do think though it would be an insider that would fill that vacuum because there's going to be certain people that I don't think are going to get touched like that. Like Barry Silbert, for instance, he's not going to get touched that way. I absolutely believe that he is a core actor. He's heavily involved, but people have been smart in this space in the way that they don't invest. So they've been kind of using venture capital firms as their way of like operating and facilitating scam schemes and Ponzi's like by proxy. So, specifically Digital Currency Group, Pantera Capital, Blockchain Capital, Boost VC, a few others that I genuinely believe are bad actors. I think they'll be able to kind of ride into the sunset. And honestly, they will probably attempt to rebuild. And when we look at this space and when this type of stuff has happened before, they're always the ones that do rebuild. Like when Mount Gox went down, we saw Barry Silver come out and drill a bunch of money into this space. And that's how we got Kraken to get set up the way it is. That's what helped boost Coinbase up. His ties in with bitfinex is what helped boost them up. So I genuinely think the rich insiders that are in this space are going to be the ones that fill that vacuum and then try to get it back up. And it looks to me that people who are running the exchanges are always going to be the fall guys. So someone like CZ, he's in the crosshairs, Jesse Powell's in the crosshairs, and definitely whoever's running Bitfinex is absolutely in the crosshairs. And it seems this way with Silicon Valley too. Like you look at Tim Draper's investment in Theranos, nobody ever really questions, I think, the VCs. It's always who is running the investment. They get the, shot in the middle of the forehead, they're crucified, and the other guys can say, well, shit, we invested. We're just victims too.
Is there any exchanges that can be trusted? Like, say if someone's watching this, who could they trust? Yeah,
nobody.
I don't trust them. Yeah,
it's just too
straight up.
It's too much. I really think at this point it's almost getting to a human, because this space just swallows too much shit. That's the problem. If we were more critical and we held people's feet to the fire, I would say there probably are a couple entities where maybe they could be trusted. But even with Binance, when the whole hack thing happened, I think it should have been scrutinized. There were some people, they got in my ass because I said it first. I didn't think that the outputs from their hot wallet would be spendable. Okay, cool, I'm wrong. But at the same time, nothing this dude is saying makes any level of sense. Like with the APIs being compromised, and then him saying also that the two-factor authentication was compromised too. I'm not understanding how that happens, and with the value of accounts that happens with, because they withdrew 7,000, and that kind of leads me to believe, since that was the limit in that hot wallet, that if these people were able to take more, then they would have. So if what he is saying is true, then they've been compromised on a very deep level. But even more so, they don't use like SIM authentications for the two-factor, right? So it's not like a text message is sent or you get a call. Like it's the actual like Google authenticator. So the only way I could see something like that happening is like with a phishing attack or like a man in the middle. But you don't ever see something like that generate like 40 million. I mean, we saw the Mu wallet for Ethereum, there were a couple man in the middle attacks for them back in 2018. It's like, okay, they got a couple million, but that's not the type of exploit or social engineering that's going to lead you to take out 40 fucking $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, we haven't seen any of the document. It's just the lack of transparency and the fact that the space just tacitly accepts it, I think, is created a culture where essentially asking which exchange we can trust is almost like saying, is there somebody in this world that you could trust with tens of millions of dollars that won't do anything wrong with it, even though they probably could and get away with it? And I'm always going to bet no with that one.
Yeah, well said. I agree. I totally agree. This space it can be a circus show at times. So
yeah.
just kind of sticking on that for a little bit more. What about decentralized exchanges? I mean, I've read all kinds of things where these decentralized platforms, or decentralized, have like a kill switch on the back end. Would you say decentralized exchanges are any different?
I think given the state of where technology is at, either there will be two outcomes that come with decentralized exchanges. I think either it won't be an exchange that's truly decentralized. So you'll have something like Binance's DEX where it's built off of Tendermint and, it has the classical proof of stake sort of thing. And you have the validators, and more than likely there'll be a hefty number of those validators. And essentially it's, I don't know, a quasi blockchain or just enough for them to say, hey, we have a blockchain. Or you'll have a situation where it is decentralized, but because of the limitations of blockchain, it can't really allow for that throughput that you would get with Binance. So, you have these high frequency traders that maybe they're on Kraken or whatever, and, they'll just trade back and forth a million times, or even regular people like, you can kind of just initiate trades like that. But on a true DEX, at least based on what we have available to us and what developers can do now in this space, people won't be able to trade like that. And I think that's why they've never really gotten traction. And I in the future, I definitely think that there's high potential for it. But right now, I just don't think the technology's there in a way where people will be satisfied with a true decentralized exchange.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So switching gears a bit to the price, the price has kind of cooled down in the last 24 hours, but from the start of like 2019, it's been pretty crazy. So what do you think is triggering this price movement? Is it a migration from Tether to Bitcoin or an altcoins, old money kind of pumping itself? Or is it institutions, or do you see something else at play? Or maybe it's a perfect storm coming together. What are you seeing at the moment, mate?
That's a good question because, I've ruled out sentiment because, even in 2017, for example, yes, there was some manipulation in the price rise, but it was like accompanied by crazy fervor. Like we saw people saying they were going to mortgage their house so that they could buy more Bitcoin and just doing like absurd stuff. Like the hype was crazy. So
It was crazy, yeah, really crazy.
Yeah, it was like understandable, but it's like now the hype, none of that's really there like that. Nobody's really talking about it. Normal quote unquote people are outside of this space that don't really fuck with crypto. Like they haven't really been mentioning Bitcoin. Nobody's hitting me up like, yo, James, you remember that Bitcoin thing? So to me, I was already kind of like, it was just an uneasy feeling, I'll say, because I was like, nah, it's not the same. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that same feel. But in terms of why,
the Google search trends are still really low as well for Bitcoin as well. Just want to add that in there.
Right. No, that's a great point. Like, yeah, and I like that you said that because that's like validation right there in terms of like just straight up metrics. Like, we don't have people who are just all of a sudden like, yo, what is this Bitcoin thing, and going crazy. So I definitely think there's a, yeah, FOMO to a certain extent, but more so than anything, I think just like heavy manipulation. And coming off of the back of the Binance hack and the OAG decision, and the federal court sort of jamming up Bitfinex's payment processes, it makes me really suspicious. And one thing that I never really got to say before to anybody, I actually looked through the Bitcoin Cash Explorer because I never really looked through it before. I was like, why not? And I noticed that exchanges, like, they have a swarm of Bitcoin Cash. I mean, you know, exchanges like Binance, Bitfinex. I mean, these people were sitting on like tens of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin Cash. And I realized that that one in particular really goes crazy as well whenever the markets are going up. Like, it'll have these 30, and the cynic in me says that if I were jammed up or my payment processor fucked up and we lost a lot of money, it would be super convenient to get a cool extra 40-50% out of the markets. I think given all the access exchange operators have, they're able to trade against people. They know what trades people have, and margin markets in specific, they're so good at gaming it. Like, they'll, wait until people just overextend a little bit on shorts, and then, you'll all of a sudden see prices just shoot out and people get liquidated. Like, in the last 24 hours, I've seen crazy ass like leverage trades just get liquidated both ways. Like, a long trade over 1 million contracts, boom, liquidated. Short trade, like couple million contracts, liquidated. And I did a little bit of research on I guess how this sort of works in terms of fees and the payouts, and exchanges make a fucking killing off of it. And
Right.
even more
Yeah.
so, if they really sit down there and do their homework, they could make themselves counterparties in some of those trades and like profit in an even crazier way. So I for that reason, I'm mad skeptical. I don't think it was consensus, because when we look back last year, like, consensus happened, the price didn't move. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yes, yeah, just the
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Everyone was expecting consensus to like lift up their bags last year, and nothing happened. I think it was like the first time in like 4 years it didn't happen. It totally broke the trend, and that's when people started to realize that shit was hitting the fan.
right.
But yeah, talking of all these altcoins and stuff, what about Ethereum 2.0? I kind of laugh when I say this. Do you think it's like the future of smart contracts? And will it be backwards compatible with the proof of work chain that we've got currently?
That's a good question. That latter one that you asked, I have no clue. Hopefully they can pull it off. I'm not even really sure how, in theory, that such a transition can be made where it's secure. I'm always of the mind that proof of stake is just centralized, because I don't see how it can be, asynchronous. And like, sort of, I guess I don't want to, like, I guess, ramble too much or bore anybody, but the gift of Bitcoin is that somebody sends a transaction, right? It's in the mempool for a little while, and then miners, they mine it. Once they find the block, they submit it to the network. What ensures that Bitcoin keeps going is that certain nodes can hear about that block, they'll validate it and say, okay, this is valid, and they can run with that version. But let's say there's another miner that also finds a block around the same time, and he sends that to nodes that didn't get the first one. They'll say, okay, this block works too. And Bitcoin and proof of work is kind of designed in a way where it'll always resolve it by using that greatest proof of work rule. So eventually, one will be longer than the other. All nodes will find out about it. They'll go with that, and then whatever the one that got thrown away will be the orphan. So in that way,
Right. Yeah.
we can always sort of have a disagreement. We can have bad actors, but that rule gets followed. But with proof of stake, you don't really get that benefit. And I think I'm not glad, because, I don't want anything to fuck up for anybody. I don't wish bad like that. But with Ontology specifically and Neo, we saw earlier this year, their blockchains literally halted. Like,
I
no,
remember.
Yeah, no transactions, no nothing. And I feel like that's the terrible setback you get with proof of stake. Now, I'm sure Ethereum, their network is a lot bigger, so hopefully they implement it in a better way. But ultimately, if you can't come to that 100%, or once you reach that threshold of 2/3 of those validators or whoever says, okay, this is good to go, then everybody says, all right, we just accepted what these guys say and we're good. But if you don't ever hit that, you're just at that stalemate forever. And because of that, it's just like a centralized model by default. And that's why I've always been against it. And most proof of stake models I look at, I'm seeing some pretty innovative ones. They always seem to involve some sort of owning some sort of allocation of the coins. And that, because I don't think it's fair. And the reason why is because with proof of work, you had the benefit of, sure, you got Bitmain, right, where they have to, maybe they own 40% of the hashing power collectively on Bitcoin, but they have to keep pushing. You know what I mean? As Bitcoin is more valuable, there's more competitors. They have to continue to onboard more units, spend more money. They can't just stay in the same spot. But with a lot of proof of stake protocols, like if you get 60, 70% of the coins, you could chill on that and you're making decisions in perpetuity. Like that's the problem with EOS. You have, block producers up there that have a large portion of coins already. They can throw their weight behind votes, ensure that the same people are always producing things, they get the rewards from it. And it's just like that self-perpetuating, they stay at the top. Ultimately, there could be a competitor that comes in and pushes out Bitmain. But with proof of stake and a lot of these models, if they get enough of that currency, then they're just kind of locked in there. And I really hate that. But my bad, I was in a little bit. With Ethereum, you had asked, will it be backwards compatible? And what else was it again? My bad.
That was pretty much it. Yeah, pretty much. Will it be the future of smart contract platforms, and will it be backwards compatible? But you kind of answered it already, really.
I don't know. I just don't feel like this is I just don't feel like it's a good move to I don't get moving to proof of stake. Like proof of work it's the best. Like, listen, I get the environment shit that people talk about, but I don't feel like that is a problem that can't be worked through.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just such a, I don't know, it's just like by definition, I feel like it's how it should work. Like, and people always say, oh, what if the Chinese, companies or whatever form a conglomerate and take over? Then it is what it is. Like, we have to believe for Bitcoin to be collapsed, we'd have to believe that these folks have spent years, have curated all of the expertise, done the months of testing on chips, releasing new models of miners, the research, creating this network, investing in billions. Like this livelihood. Like they're not going home doing something else. Like this is what they do. We'd have to believe that one day they wake up and they say, fuck it. Fuck everything, fuck Bitcoin, fuck everything. We're done with it. We're collapsing everything. And not only that, have their entire organization on board with them. Because people could defect, people could put the word out, whatever it is. I think somebody would get murdered before they could get away with that.
Yeah, this is the thing. Sticking with the kind of Ethereum theme quickly, what's the truth regarding the whole Ethereum DAO hack in 2016? Was it like an inside job? Because I remember that shit happening all those years ago. It feels like yesterday. What's your take on it?
Right. I can't, of course, say it's an inside job, but I do think the timing is super weird. Like I put up where, I was just going through some things and I stumbled on like a link that I hadn't seen for a little while. And it was to Vitalik. He was talking about basically in 2015, he was letting people know, okay, the Ethereum Foundation, like we're running out of money pretty much. And he noted that he went over to China and he didn't say them by name, but I'm 99% sure that's when the connection to Finn Bushy was made. And then another Chinese entity, I can't remember the name, but he actually mentioned it to me when we were talking before. And he said, hey guys, I got this much in investment from them in my trip here to China. This will be just about good enough to last us to roughly June or July-ish. then we're probably going to be, you know, insolvent or bankrupt. So fast forward to June or July-ish in 2016, we get the DAO hack. And I thought the timing of that was nuts because, of course, you know, the Ethereum Classic is born through it. If, you know, you're holding Ethereum and correct addresses, you definitely benefited from whatever holdings you had gained from there. And then the I'd have to go through to give the specific details, but members of the Ethereum Foundation, not under the umbrella of themselves, but individuals sort of form this offset collective called like the Robin Hood group or something, and were able to gain possession of some of the funds. And that left them with like a few million, some of the funds from the DAO hack, my bad to be specific. And that left them after the split with some Ethereum Classic. A few million, I think 2 or 3 maybe. Uh, More or less that just it got liquidated. It got sent through exchanges and liquidated, and they claimed that that was supposed to be paid back to people that had lost money or that they would distribute it somehow, but we never really heard from it. The guys sort of distanced themselves from each other. Of course, you know, the folks that were part of Ethereum Foundation that were sort of connected to it said, hey, this has nothing to do with the foundation. You know, we were just kind of in it, but not really. We were dabbling. We don't really know what's going on with these guys. And then it kind of rocked from there. And the whole context, and not only that, looking at how the DAO hack happened, like it was a super masterful hack. I mean, it wasn't like somebody, you know, the stereotypical hacker we see who's just a super fucking Mark Zuckerberg genius who, you know, only he could have been able to, you know, engineer through and figure this out. I mean, it was a flaw that a lot of people saw. And knowing that someone like Vitalik, for example, is, you know, one of the main reasons why Ethereum uses Solidity, knowing that these people are supposed to be essentially experts in this language, more so than anybody else, not being able to see that error or there being other people in the community pointing this out too before the crowd sale even happened, saying, yo, somebody could do such and such. We've reached out to these developers. We said, hey, are you guys going to do anything? No action being taken. And then the hack happened. It just didn't seem to me like this was something that was not preventable. And it seems like Ethereum Foundation also benefited for sure. And then on top of that, it coincides right around the date where Vitalik states that they should have been insolvent. So those three things combined made me say, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I remember, and yeah, there are a few like red flags raised with that. So, kind of onto the last few questions. What makes a cryptocurrency project good? I mean, what pillars define it as like as a good, legitimate, scalable, long-term project, if there are any out there?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this. Because there's like a few facets, and I know people they see me lean in on projects, but I get it. Like there's certain people in this sphere, right? They don't give a fuck about, you know, all the promises in the project. They want to know, will I get my money back for it? And I feel that. So I think a good project, if we're gonna put it on a scale of 1 to 10, a project that falls in that 9 to 10 range should be one that ideally is sustainable in terms of how they'll continue to exist. So, you know, we saw a lot of ICOs come out, and basically their business model was we don't really have a business or a way of making money. So, we're going to hold on to a certain portion of these tokens or coins. And as time goes on, if we are running out of money, then we'll just sell some of these on the market so that we can get more money in order to continue to fuel our project. And, you know, the obvious issue that you're always going to run into is that sooner or later they run out of funds. And then what happens when you get to that point? And not only that, like there's some people who they acknowledge it because they think, okay, but you know, if my project, if they really blow up and they get mainstream adoption, then you know the coin will be worth like 1,000 times what it is. And even if that does happen, they're still going to run out because as you scale up, so do the costs with whatever you're doing. So if you have a project that can consider that and find out a way to ensure they keep operating, then that's one facet. Another one I think that's important is, do they know what they're talking about? Like, I think I gave some praise to storage in particular, because reading through their white paper, and this was before they revised it, but reading through, looking at it critically, like what they said made sense. And I don't want to put anybody on blast, but I've read a lot of white papers where I'm just like, yo, this is never gonna fucking work. Like, really, what it's it's like, just on a plaza, like, there's just some people who are coming out saying shit that's like, yo, this is like nobody's ever done this. You know what I mean? It's like if I put out a white paper and I said, yeah, I know nobody's ever done this, but I'm basically building a time machine and I'm pretty confident I'm going to make it happen. And you know what I mean? Asking for it. And I feel like that's kind of the equivalent of what people are doing when they say, hey, we're going to shard, we're going to reach 20,000 transactions per second. Like, sharding is hard. Like, even if you're just sharding a regular database and splitting that into partitions and sort of being able to run that, concurrently and scaling that way, that's difficult. But on blockchain, I mean, we're talking about on a conceptual level, this is hard. Never mind the code, never mind the trying to make sure that you have a stable, secure network that also can scale, that doesn't compromise users, and what's so crazy with blockchain is uniquely is that it's always like showtime. Like with Bitcoin, if something fucks up, that's it. Like, it's no downtime, or, if we're using Twitter, right, and there's a problem with Twitter, Jack Dorsey can just 404 the website for a day if he really wants to and say, okay, guys, we're working on some shit, come back. Facebook, they can go down, oh, we got to do maintenance. But with Bitcoin, once these projects, if they're really decentralized blockchains, once they're live, and you can't really take that back. So if things fuck up, there's a heavy exploit, and you don't have a solid team that knows what they're doing, you're going to fuck a lot of people up out of money. So on that tech level, sure. My bad. I know I'm going to wrap it up. I promise.
No, it's cool. Go carry on. It's all right.
Oh, thanks, man. I think in the making of a good project, I think it has to be sort of a 360 that fulfills two sides. So I always say there's the one side where, does this shit even work? Like, is it tech solid at all? Like, do these people actually know what they're talking about? Like, if you go through the GitHub, like, are they really doing what they said they're going to do in the white paper? And is their idea viable? Because there are people who, like, the tech is not bad. They do have shit that fulfills perhaps what they said they were going to do in the white paper in terms of code, but the idea is so grandiose that it's not realistic. And then the resources the team has won't allow them to compete. I mean, I've seen people put out shit that's like, we're going to compete with Samsung, or, we're going to go in here and take market share from Apple. And it's like, what? So that's where I think another aspect of a good project is like, do these people have market acumen? And I think that's probably what a lot of people care about a lot. And in my opinion, it's a little bit of a tricky one, because you have a Justin Sun with Tron, for instance, right? Where a lot of people would argue that his marketing tactics are not necessarily ethical, and perhaps that he only just drives up FOMO and hype, and perhaps that's the main booster behind Tron and BitTorrent. But at the same time, he is effective in doing so. So if I were to rate that aspect of Tron, I would have to say perhaps it's an A+. Tech level, it's I don't think so. So sort of like, I when I look at a project, I kind of like to look at that two sides of, like, there's a tech work and how's the marketing. Like Bitcoin Cash SV, I mentioned him before. Tech level, I think the dudes working on that shit are smart as hell, actually. It's not Craig Wright that's developing on it. He's talking on here and all this other shit, but the regular dudes who are working on it are like people who are developing on Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash. Like, they're smart dudes, and they're coming up with some cool shit. But if on the marketing side of it, terrible. Their optics are fucking terrible. They got delisted from Binance, Kraken. They paid all over the place. So that's an F- for me. So for me, a good project would be one that fills, checks all of the boxes. And if I could give an example of it, Monero, I think is a good example of it. Because Monero, they're sustainable in that they're really a decentralized community. So there was recently a book called Mastering Monero, basically like the Mastering Bitcoin that Antonopoulos put out a while ago, but it was a community-oriented thing. Yeah, and they sort of got the same thing going on that we saw with Bitcoin, where, Gavin, Garzik, Maxwell, those guys that came in and developed with Satoshi, like they weren't getting paid. It was like, hey, we believe in this shit. We just want to do it. We're passionate. And that allowed them to get sort of that free labor and get Bitcoin going. And Monero has that same thing. Not only that, the tech is useful. Zcash, there's a number of issues with it. Obviously, Peter Todd just carved these dudes up at that magical crypto conference. To me, Monero is the only one that's fulfilled that promise now of actually facilitating private transactions on blockchain that can't be traced back. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding. If anybody's on the dark web and they see crazy illegal shit going on, like if those people are taking payment for it, they're always going to ask for Monero. I think that says a lot. I think, especially when regulation, if this shit hits the fan and governments start cracking down, like we definitely can't rule out how heavily sought after that Monero will be, because
that's true. That's true.
That could be the workaround everything. Like, they already have like a decentralized exchange, like, the possibilities that come from that and what Monero could open the portal to. I mean, in my opinion, it may be the most undervalued by like a mile. Like it's proof of work. It's solid. The development is good. It's actually private. The privacy it's invaluable in my opinion. I think it's slept on, but it's got good optics. Nobody hates it. That's what I would call a good project.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, understood. So final question, and it kind of wraps up everything that we've kind of spoke about. What does the crypto community need to move forward in the future? I can think of a bunch of things off the top of my head, but what do you think?
I definitely want to hear your thoughts too, though.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. But I guess I think I would say maturity, but not in a condescending way, but in more so of I think we kind of need to make a decision, I guess, as a community of what do we really want. Because I think a lot of people kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. Like we want to have the crazy 1000% gains and shit that we saw in 2017, but at the same time, we want super legitimate projects with hardworking teams that are creating crazy technology and fulfilling all their promises. And I just don't think that those two things are congruent. I think if people really want a tempered space that is focused on actually developing this blockchain technology and not just spending 99% of their efforts on talking about the price, then they're going to have to deal with perhaps maybe I don't get a 3, 4, 500% gain from it, but I get the benefit from the actual use. And I think that kind of goes to a core belief. But if that's not the case, then I think people should accept, hey, I'll take my random 30% gains. I won't question it. If Bitcoin goes from 4K to 7K, I don't give a fuck. I'll take my money and go home. And they'll have that. But at the same time, they'll have to reconcile that this will never fulfill its promises, because it'll always just be relegated to how much money can I make from it. And I think we at some point, I don't know when, but at some point people have to come to the realization that it has to have some sort of intuitive value, I think, for it to ever be usable. And I think it has to be something that can be used viably and accepted in a real context before it can ever like reach its potential. So it's like a bittersweet pill, almost like the fantasy that we all dream of oh, Bitcoin's accepted everywhere, da 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 da. I don't think that that can happen while everybody is also simultaneously, you know, getting 100, 200% gains. I I think the final step would be we have to revamp the leadership in the community. I think the it's not people's fault. I think a lot of folks have been misled greatly by the folks that are in positions of authority in blockchain. Um, I think we've kind of tacitly accepted people as thought leaders, and we've kind of put certain folks in positions where they're beyond reproach or beyond question. Like Binance is an exchange, you know what I mean? CZ, he's just an individual, but there are people who still are staunch defenders of him. You know, they take offense if you question what's going on with Binance. They feel that it's FUD, and they feel, nah, this dude is a good guy. He's beyond reproach. We shouldn't look into him critically. And I see that same sort of mentality is like tossed to other major folks in this sphere. Of course, there are people who are critical, but in general, there's kind of this idea of like, nah, this dude is big or they're doing this. There's no way they would do this. Like that's what we're seeing with bitfinex and tether. We're seeing people come out saying, come on, man, you think that they're involved in money laundering and this. It's obviously just a banking problem. The banks are really and that's why I say the leadership, because people like Adam Back, they're smart enough to where they know that's not the case. And that's what irritates me about it. And that's why I call them out, because these are people who they know better. They know what the real issue is, and they put out these disingenuous arguments by trying to say, oh, Tether isn't pegged, but the dollar isn't backed by anything else either. Not understanding that these are completely different situations where a dollar is just a form of currency versus Tether actually says it is a dollar. So it's in a whole nother lane. But they know we can drown out anybody like this James guy or somebody, you know, who tries to make a counter argument, and we'll say that's FUD or a conspiracy. And we will misuse and manipulate the ethos of the space to get people on board with crime. Like they will take these principles that are legitimate, which is that people should have autonomous control of their money. And, you know, this blockchain stuff will usher in a new revolution. But and they'll pimp that to say, oh, Bitfinex is someone you should support because they're the poster child for these banks that are imposing their will upon you in the space. And I feel like it's fucked up, and it's evil to an extent. And it subverts a positive message into just being a weapon or a tool to get people on board with crooks.
Yeah. I agree, man. Like, I think the crypto community definitely needs to mature. Not personally, but I mean as a space, as a sector, you know, as a group of people. I also see like what you're seeing, where this, like how people worship these people like they're false messiahs or something, and these messiahs get elevated to these levels where no one questions them, no one you know, if you try and question them or even just ask a simple question that may not totally fit with the narrative, everyone will kind of call it out as FUD, conspiracies, when you're only trying to ask a question. You know, and I see that all the time. That's very common with like you know, you have like, I've had like things like bitfinex and all these kind of Ponzi schemes. When these Ponzi schemes, I'm not saying crypto is a Ponzi, but I'm using it as an example, where these Ponzi's would kind of grow and have their own little sub community, their little subculture. Anyone coming in who would say, well, how is the revenue generated? How is this done? X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. Everyone would kind of call those people out for asking simple questions, like simple mathematical questions, and they would ignore the reality, and then they would get shunned and blocked and thrown out and censored. And I think a lot of that happens in crypto. And I think, like you said, for everything to be accepted in mainstream, where the average Joe is using, you know, everyone's favorite shitcoins, something has to give way. Where if crypto is going up 200% a month and then down 50%, then up like 300%, it's it's going to be hard to use it as like a day-to-day currency. So something kind of has to be given where there has to be some kind of stability going forward long term for it all to be accepted. And of course, then you got projects that don't really want to comply with regulations. So then those platforms will be like a kind of Wild West. See, people are happy. People in the crypto space. And I've been blocked from like loads of groups for saying this. I'm always getting blocked. People all the time. It's like standard. People in the crypto space are happy to get 500, 1000% gains every single day, but that one day where their money gets frozen, they're crying and bitching about it. But when they were getting those big gains, they're putting like the middle finger up at like authorities, at government, at rules, at regulation, at simple kind of set guideline for people not to scam each other. But when shit hits the fan for them, and they can and that money is frozen on that exchange, they're crying about it. They want someone to come and rescue them. So it's either one or the other. They either or people figure out a way to kind of operate together without scamming each other up and fucking each other up the ass, basically. So I think people need to kind of make a decision in the crypto space. People, everyone wants to get rich quick, innit? Everyone wants to get rich quick, and they want those big 2017 gains again. And from what I've seen with this recent pump, everyone's still kind of getting excited. And sure, that's fine. It's Bitcoin. It's going up. Great. Not hating against that at all, but nothing's really changed. The more things have changed, the more things have stayed the same in the last 2.5 years. Exchanges will still freeze wallets when that shitcoin is pumping, so people can't withdraw. So many stories from back in the day, and it seems like it's going to happen again and again and again until something gives way. Maybe regulators kind of think, right, that's it, crack the whip, come in, they're going to come in. Then legacy system platforms come in and replace these exchanges. I mean, another thing as well is with the crypto space is where we all get our data from in regards to understanding the markets. Coin market cap. If you look at Coin Market Cap's total market cap chart, at one point in that chart, like 2017 part, it's including data from BitConnect and other scams like BitConnect. Now, how valid is data from BitConnect when it's a scam? So, and it's not even here no more. So it's not quite. So I'm not having a go at Coin Market Cap. But it's the data that these exchanges and these platforms are given out to the rest of the community. How credible is it? So these are things that the crypto space is going to have to kind of come over, and that's probably why a lot of these institutional platforms delayed, because maybe maybe the data that they were getting to price whatever that is they're supporting wasn't totally accurate, and they kind of needed to kind of create an alternative strategy around that. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and people say it's early days, and stuff, but I think there is a lot. Crypto Twitter is fun. It's fun to watch. It's crazy, but yeah, there is like people who have elevated to some kind of messiah status, but really they're like wolves, just leading people to slaughter basically on crypto Twitter. Pumping some shitcoin, pumping some token. But that's why I get blocked all the time. But that's my take on it as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Okay. Wow, this has been great, man. Some really good insights here. Is there any kind of closing thoughts you want to give before we wrap this up, mate?
Honestly, no. I think at least for me, I think that that covers it. I mean, this was a good session. This is a good session. We should definitely run this one back, at some point. I'm glad we were able to connect and make this happen.
Definitely. Likewise, and I like your realistic take on things, and you say it how it is. So I like that. So yeah, thank you for your time, mate. Thank you to everyone who watches this, and catch you all next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Okay.